Here we have with us Jorge Sainz, that some of you already know. He is professor at the University Politécnica of Madrid in the Department of Composition. He is a long time editor, publisher, and since years we have the honor, and also he candidly accepted the possibility to put order in the amount of thousands and thousands of drawings by Norman. And the goal has been to publish 2 volumes every year. So this is volume 4, although it's volume 5, because the first he decided to call 0, that is sold out. So now we have the volume 4 that he's going to talk about. Has the same structure than the others, although there are some drawings that never has been published or seen that he discovered in the archives, which is the interesting thing for archives. In fact, whoever here is interested in archives, the foundation, Norman Foster Foundation, has published just this week 2 volumes, one on master classes and another one on conversation with the key individuals all over the world about archives and architecture that we did during the pandemic. So we have registered all, transcribed, edited, and appeared last year. And I think with Jorge mainly, but all the ones who we are obsessed with archives, because archives made history, is a tool for any architect who wants to know what is happening in another archives all over the world. So I give you...
Como en otras presentaciones que hemos hecho aquí en Ivorypress, en las que yo he participado, voy a combinar el español con el inglés. Y como suelo decir, as usually, I will try to speak English. Me gustaría empezar esta conversación, Norman, con una pregunta muy sencilla. A simple question. In 1994, Bernard Blasa edited the first book about your sketches. In your introduction, you said that without your admiration for him, the idea of compiling a book of personal sketches would be quite inconceivable. And added, I have a certain sense of invasion and a degree of embarrassment. Well, now have already published 5 volumes about your sketchbooks with about 3,800 sketches. How do you feel now?
Still embarrassed. I was encouraged by Werner Blaser way back then to have sketches and drawings published. I think drawings are very different from sketches, and when you're sketching in a book, it's a very private exchange unless you're consciously doing a more formal sketch to distribute, to communicate an idea or to continue an exchange. So I think maybe from 1994 to now, I'm a little less inhibited. So more open to how can I say, opening up a more private world and perhaps sharing a process and perhaps through that process, because quite a lot of the sketches have many names on them and they're a part of a dialogue. So they reveal the team activity of designing.
And another simple question. Now that you know that many sketches will be published, are you changing any aspect of the way you draw in your sketchbooks?
No, it never ever crosses my mind that something that I'm doing in the book that I carry all the time is a private book. So I think if you're thinking that what you're doing is going to be in the public domain, you would probably never do. You'd probably be totally inhibited. But I was, in an earlier conversation, somebody who's in the audience, but I won't embarrass that person by name, was saying, if I was selecting your sketches, it would be somewhat different. And I was saying that if I was selecting my sketches, it would be somewhat different. And so we all have a criteria, if you like. What was your criteria? I mean, how did you decide to select one sketch and reject another one? Because in the end, it's only a selection.
By the attraction to my eye. When I see a sketch and I think, wonderful, I select it. And if the volume 0, no, but in the 1, 2, and 3, we explain now, I would like to explain, as you say, the process. There are sketches that are very similar, but when you see them one after another, you see who you have changed mind about the project. And then, this is about the sketches about projects. But you know very well that I like very much your humorous drawings, and your recipes, and your travel, and your flights drawing. So, I will speak about this criteria, but it's purely visual. If I feel attracted by a sketch, I select it.
Can't think of a better reason.
Okay, we continue. Bueno, parece necesario, después de estas dos preguntas muy directas, hacer una pequeña descripción para quien no conozca completamente la serie, la colección, y que no vino a la primera presentación, que hagamos un pequeño resumen, ¿no? Y también voy a combinar. En 2020 se publicó lo que Elena ha llamado Volume 0, que no lleva el 0 en ningún sitio, que es una selección panorámica de todos los sketchbooks que había entonces en la fundación, about 600 sketches, from 1975 to 2020. Esto significaba from the first archived sketchbook to the last sketchbook that arrived to the foundation, dated November 2019. There are much more now. So, 2020, Volume 0, 1975-2020, about 650 sketches, 420 pages. En 2021 apareció el volumen 1, que es el primero de la serie que vamos a hacer cada 5 años, 1975-1980. Y estos dos volúmenes son los que se presentaron en el año 2021, cuando la pandemia nos permitió reunirnos aquí como ahora, ¿no? So, 2021, Volume 1, 1975-1980, about 625 sketches, about 460 pages. The idea of making 2 volumes a year was impossible. So I have done 1 volume a year, except 2023, that I have been very, very productive, and I have done 2 volumes. So, 2022 salió el volumen 2, los siguientes 5 años, 81, 85, y este es lo que yo por lo menos llamo el Jumbo Volume. 1.300 dibujos, ahora lo diré en inglés, 720 páginas. Recuerdo haber haberme quedado muy asustado cuando llegué a este volumen y haber consultado con Norman y con Elena. Y los dos dijeron, estupendo, adelante. La razón fundamental de este gran volumen es que en este periodo estaba uno de los mejores proyectos de la carrera de Norman y de ese año, ¿no? Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. So, 2022, Volume 2, 1981 to 85, 1,300 sketches, 720 pages. En 2023, como he dicho en inglés, he sido un poco más productivo y he hecho 2 volúmenes, como inicialmente habíamos previsto. El 3, 86-90, el 4, 91-95, que es el que en principio estamos presentando aquí. El volumen 3 se presentó en París con motivo de la exposición de Norman en el Centro Pompidou. Y el cuarto, pues lo estamos presentando aquí. So, 2023, Volume 3, 1986 to 1990, about 730 sketches, 525 pages, and Volume 4, 1991 to 95, about 450 sketches, 400 pages. Es decir, hasta ahora hemos publicado unos 3.750 dibujos y unas 2.500 páginas. Todavía no me lo creo. Norman, about 3,750 sketches and 2,500 pages. En una reseña que acaba de salir en Arquitectura Viva, Luis Fernández Galeano, que participó en la presentación de los volúmenes 0 y 1, reseña 3 libros, la gran monografía de Taschen, el catálogo del Pompidou y el volumen 3 de los Sketchbooks. Y Luis se ha tomado la molestia de pesar los libros. Luis weighed 3 books. Your Taschen monograph, the Pompidou catalogue, and volume 3 of Sketchbooks. Obviously, Taschen was the winner. 11.35 kilos. Well, I have weighed 5 volumes of your sketchbooks, and we have almost arrived to the 11 kilos. Volume 5 is on the way. This is the description of the whole collection up to today. More questions. Otra idea que siempre me ha parecido muy sugestiva sobre el concepto que tiene Norman Foster de sus sketchbooks es la idea de un estudio portátil. In the foreword of Volume 0, you wrote that Sketchbooks was the equivalent of a portable studio which combines the drafting of letters or memos with sketching as a solitary activity, often done whilst on the move. I think this idea of portable studio could be remarkably interesting for would-be architects. So, what would you say to young people?
Keep drawing, sketching. I think that it's interesting. I hear my colleagues somewhat kind of distressed by what they see as a decline in drawing in schools of design architecture. And it's interesting that our daughter's studying architecture, doing a master's at Yale, and one of the reasons why she picked Yale was that it has this integration of sketching, drawing, and also model making, as well as being quite demanding in terms of digital computer and so on. So I think that, the more that I get involved through graduates joining the practice, through students at the foundation, I realized that those who have drawing skills are able to get more out of the digital world. There is an interesting relationship. I mean, in the end, it's all about communication, whether you're communicating with yourself, whether you're exploring, and your point about the quote where I'm on the move, perhaps it just crosses my mind from time to time as I'm being bounced around in the back of a taxi or in turbulent air and I'm sketching and it suddenly becomes kind of shaky, whether they'll, if that's ever published, whether there's a realization that I kind of haven't lost my grip, but it's, you know, it's the oscillations of a vehicle or whatever. So, no, I think I'm very fortunate in being able to, wherever I am, moving around, to be able to focus. And the sketchbook, for me, it's an indispensable tool. But in the end, it's only one of several tools. I mean, whether it's models, whether it's conversations, whether it's brainstorming. I mean, in the end, the whole creative process is about individuals sparking off each other. And I just find it very helpful to be able to use a drafting skill to aid that communication.
Bueno, yo añadiría, por lo menos a los que son directamente mis alumnos, que están aquí algunos, que toméis buena nota, que miréis muy bien los dibujos, los sketchbooks de Norman Foster y que intentéis dibujar esto, porque en nuestra escuela este tipo de dibujos cada vez se hacen menos. Y como muy bien ha explicado, es una forma estupenda de, entre otras cosas, comunicar vuestras ideas. Bueno, otro aspecto, otro concepto de los sketchbooks que para mí siempre ha sido muy revelador cuando leía los textos, cuando miraba los dibujos, cuando miraba las monografías con los proyectos ya publicados, ¿no? Well, you have written also, and you have said right now, that sketchbook is a tool for thinking, a tool for communicating, a tool for researching, and of course, a tool for designing. No? So is your favorite tool? Your favorite tool?
Oh yes, I mean a pencil by all means. I think the archiving of sketches is interesting in the way that it enables you, if you do go over retrospectively, you realize perhaps the way in which a design has evolved. I'm thinking more recently of a project in Korea, a competition, and it was only the process of assembling the sketches that I'd done on that project in several books, but putting them together chronologically made me realize, perhaps for the first time, that what I was sketching more recently was directly linked to my experience in the city of that project when I visited the site. So the process of archiving makes you perhaps conscious of the connections which otherwise you would never be aware of, and I think that's one of perhaps the advantages of the process that you have been going through, which if it was left to me, I would keep putting it to one side, and as Elena knows, we wouldn't even have one sketchbook at the moment, because I'd always find an excuse to put it to one side.
Well, I said communicating because recently I have seen some videos about the competition of 425 Park Avenue that you won. And I saw your video explaining your project with some drawings. And afterward, it was a lecture of one of my colleagues about oral expression. And he compared your presentation of your project with that of those of Rem Koolhaas and Zaha Hadid. As it was about oral, the body expression and oral expression was perfectly comprehensible that you won the competition, because especially Zaha Hadid was incapable of explaining her project, and only her team with Schumacher there was capable of explaining it. So, next time.
I take issue with that. First of all, that competition had an extraordinary jury. I'm thinking back, individuals like Vishaan Chakrabarti, who is a very, very insightful architect. He was advising the Bloomberg administration, I think, at that time, and subsequently has, so what I'm saying is that the developer behind that project lined up an extraordinary jury, and they studied all those entries. So in the end, if you actually talk to that developer, they made the decision based on the design. The presentations, I would argue that perhaps some of us made it easier for some of that jury to understand, particularly those who were not coming out of a design or academic background. I guess what I'm saying is that some juries are very superficial. Some, you hear the descriptions of some competitions where an individual who's in a very powerful authoritarian role can go around the room and say, I'll have that one. And it's very much a kind of whim of the moment based on the visualization. But there are those competitions which are truly rigorous, and 425 Park was a very rigorous process. So in the end, communication can oil the wheels, but it doesn't substitute for design.
But in this case, I remember that you showed almost everything was drawings, not computer drawings, your sketches, and I think this is very important for, as you say, for people that do not come from the architectural world.
I remember the how can I say? Sometimes the rules are such that when you submit drawings for a competition, that's it. The process is frozen at a certain point. But when it comes to the presentation, there are no rules. So on more than one occasion, I've taken the presentation boards with the drawings on and turned them around for the white surface, and then talk to the white surface and the audience with a felt tip pen to explain perhaps an idea. I mean, I did that on the Neem project. So again, it's a dialogue, and I don't think there's any subject for spontaneity. And And the best juries and presentations and exchanges are a process of drawing the competitors out. And in many ways, finding how close they are to the projects that they're presenting, because some of those individuals have been immersed in the project, and some of those individuals have been prepped by the people who have done the design. In the end, and if I come back to 425, we were a team, and there was no division between the engineers on that team and the architects on that team. And in a way, that building, the structure is the architecture, and the architecture is the structure. And when we presented, we were presenting from the heart, because we designed that project together. And you can't fake that. You can't play act it. You either get it or you don't.
Talking this afternoon with Luis Fernandez Galeano about these videos, I have said, is that Norman, how is able to draw spontaneously? He's a good sketcher. I remember the famous conference lectures by Le Corbusier in South America in a blackboard that afterwards became the drawings in a book. And the illustrations of some of the books are the drawings he made in the blackboard. And that I thought, this is only possible when somebody can draw very well, as you.
But I think those who inspire us maybe inspire us for different reasons, whether it's the way in which they can talk on the subject, and through the process of debating, talking, can reveal something that otherwise you would not understand, you would not communicate, or those who, through their writings or their lectures as teachers. So I've been hugely influenced by Vince Scully, for example, his illustrated lectures. And he was amazingly passionate. On one occasion, literally got so carried away, he fell off the stage in front of an audience of 500 undergraduates and a small master's class. But certainly individuals like Kahn or Corbusier would seize the moment and be uninhibited to the extent that they could communicate visually in front of an audience. So we all owe debts to those who've influenced us.
Okay, we go ahead. Hemos dicho que es un instrumento, una herramienta, a tool, pero después de 5 volúmenes, ya lo vi con el primero, comprendí que Norman Foster utiliza sus sketchbooks no solamente como herramientas, como instrumentos, sino también como un medio, por un lado, de expresión y por otro lado, de documentación. I would add that you use the sketchbook also as a way for expressing humor, pleasure, boredom, and for recording travels, happy moments in your life, experiences as flight, for example, and even recipes. So for me, it's sketching for everything. Right?
Yes, and I think that when you've presented me with your selection occasionally, I have taken out some more personal things. So in terms of perhaps causing offense from the past, when I've vented some of my frustrations in writing on the pages. And so I have, to a degree, self-censored. I think the other advantage of perhaps a different kind of sketching is obsessively going over some of the things that you know are not right on a project, whether it's the difficult junction, and you so in a way, if I'm not gifted to be able to use a computer like so many younger colleagues around me and friends, then I'm forced to use the pencil to think three-dimensionally around those awkward, complex junctions. And I remember contrasting two individuals who I was very close to at one point in the evolution of the practice. One was Helmut Jacobi, and Helmut Jacobi, and I'm sure many in the audience will know who I'm talking about, but this was a draftsman, a renderer, who, before the age of the computer, was doing the drawings for all the hero architects, whether that was Saarinen, whoever, and he was a legend. And at the time that on an early important project, which was the headquarters for an insurance company called Willis Faber, this must have been in the early 1970s, and I tracked down Helmut and found that he'd retired from America and gone back to his native Germany. And so I literally knocked on his door in Germany. I tracked him down. And he was overwhelmed with delight and enthusiasm coming back. As he said, I burnt out in America, and you've given me the opportunity to come back. And come back he did, with the most extraordinary renderings. And in the foundation, there's a huge collection of his drawings. Also in the foundation are some drawings of a colleague of those early years, somebody called Birkin Howard. And interestingly, the difference between the two individuals, one being a professional delineator of designs, and the other, who's now interestingly practicing as an artist, is that everything that Birkin would draw would look absolutely amazing, fantastic. I mean, but Helmut would draw it as it really was, and sometimes the drawings that he'd come back I wouldn't like, and I'd realize why I didn't like them, because there was some aspect that was unresolved, and somehow Helmut was absolutely truthful, and he would do the process as a cartoon, which was a very informal drawing, but it was rigorously set up. So in a way, he was a very revealing, almost human computer. So again, whether it's the casual sketch, whether it's the labored drawing, it's the essence of exploration as well as communication.
Okay. Vamos a hablar ahora un poco de técnicas gráficas, porque los sketchbooks están llenos de dibujos hechos con pocas técnicas gráficas, pero una sobre todo, lápices. Cuando escribía esto y pensaba en lápices, he recordado que yo todavía me acuerdo del olor de los lápices de madera de cedro de mi escuela primaria. Todavía, cada vez que los huelo, me recuerda cuando era pequeño y tenía que estar todo el día escribiendo. Y la fundación está llena de cubiletes con lápices como este. Lápices con la goma por arriba, por si acaso te equivocas. Llena toda la fundación, en todas las mesas hay un cubilete con estos lápices. So, Norman, I repeat. I still remember the smell of the cedar wood pencils in my elementary school. And the Norman Foster Foundation, you know, is full of, I don't know, sort of beakers, full of pencils with a small eraser on top. This one. But you're right. Everyone has his or her idea of hell. For me, it would be not being able to push a pencil. But I guess you have changed the cedar wood pencil, well sharpened, to the mechanical pencil. This one. And then to the colored pencils. By the way, can I ask you the brand of colored pencils you use? Caran d'Ache, Faber-Castell? Because I still keep my box of Caran d'Ache.
You're right about the mechanical pencil, but I'm continually exploring new colored pencils, and I was recently given a gift of several boxes of Japanese colored pencils. And they're very different from the colored pencils, and I promise you I haven't brought this for the occasion, but I was testing those colored pencils and literally marking the ones that I would select out of the 90 that I was given as a present, and I've selected 30. So 30 of those new type of Japanese pencils will now join my collection of colored pencils. So I'm sorry I can't give you a precise answer. I'm still experimenting.
Well, I remember this because my first academic activity was a teacher of drawing, and my PhD thesis is architectural drawing. So, well, we'd follow. We are finishing. Los libros de la colección son formato A4, exactamente igual que los sketchbooks que utiliza Norman casi siempre. En una primera época utilizaba cuadernos prácticamente iguales, pero con las dimensiones anglosajonas, ¿no? En pulgadas, pero básicamente A4. Cuando pensamos en la colección, pensamos que lo mejor era que los dibujos estuviesen casi como estaban en la realidad, con lo cual la mayor parte de los dibujos están a página completa, salvo algunos que ya conté en su momento, que son secuencias del proceso, y entonces hemos colocado 4 o 5 por página para que se vea la evolución y por tanto son más pequeños. Pero esos son los dibujos impresos. En la exposición del Pompidou se han llevado los sketchbooks físicamente. Y yo no lo he podido ver. I could not visit the Pompidou exhibition, but now some of the display cases have been placed in the Foundation archive. And the question is, how has been the experience of seeing so many sketchbooks together?
Well, the idea of entering through a gallery that would contain the sketchbooks was Elena's idea, and I don't think I would have ever come up with that concept, and that raised the question: if you were going to do that, how did you display them? And so it gave rise to the idea of a system of display, which was developed for the exhibition. And I think the interesting thing was that I think we were all surprised the extent to which the idea captured the imagination of a viewing public, to the extent that several people thought that was the exhibition. And in actual fact, it was only probably about 5% of the space of the total exhibition, the gallery. So it did prove immensely popular. And surprisingly, amongst that part of the public who were not coming as students or architects or people in the design business.
Thank you first to both of you for this very nice dialogue about drawing and the collection. And what I'm wondering is, with such a large collection of drawings in your lifetime, is it possible that you, Norman, have a favorite drawing or a selection of drawings that you keep to yourself?
I suppose that although they're in the sketchbooks, perhaps more recently, as almost a kind of therapy, when I've taken a brief break, I've indulged myself by spending more time and roughly sketching my surroundings, and then with a pen trying to précis more precisely, and then coloring and taking a kneaded eraser and taking away the original pencil lines. So I wouldn't say that's a favorite. It's perhaps something that I've been exploring more recently, and that might, I think, will find its way, well, it already has, into another way of communicating design. And interestingly, the director of Domus is here on the front row and invited me to guest edit next year's issues, and this afternoon I discovered they selected a whole range of those kind of drawings, so I was noting captions to them. So I think all of us in our own ways are continually exploring new methods of expression and communication. So that's my most recent indulgence. I think there was another question at the back.
Thank you. I'm Filip. I'm from Poland, currently doing my exchange at the Universitat Politecnica de Madrid here. What are your thoughts about realization of your project Central Communication Port in Poland, as it's a heating topic after change of government in our country? And how can this project benefit Poland, and why it annoys Germans so much? Thank you.
Which project is that, sorry?
Central Communication Port, like the big airport in Poland.
Ah.
I mean, we call it CPK in Poland, but...
I think that it's as a project, it's in that boundary between architecture and infrastructure. And investment in infrastructure is always massive in its numbers. And infrastructure is, you could argue, is an investment for future generations. And not surprisingly, it's a kind of political football, because it really does take courage on the part of civic leaders to be able to invest. And some use that power of firing up political discontent, and the worthy infrastructure project becomes the football to be kicked around. I can give you several examples of that. Mexico Airport was more than halfway under construction. It fulfilled a need of flight safety, investment in the future, and an important hub that would have been a huge economic boost to Mexico. The incoming president saw it in political terms, and it was cancelled. It cost more to cancel that airport than it would have done to finish it. Infrastructure, politicians talk about inequality and the imperative to erase inequality. There's a wonderful example of that in the United Kingdom, which is one of the great tragic losses due to political expediency. High-speed rail to connect Manchester in the north, Birmingham, and London would have spread equality. There was an investment because of HS2, high-speed rail, in Birmingham for a national stadium. And its catchment would have been London and Manchester. And the misinformation was spread because, of course, it was expensive, and the present Prime Minister saw it as a political opportunity in populism to cancel the link between Manchester and Birmingham, and build more roads. If you know, even a high school kid could tell you that if you were really genuinely interested in sustainability, you'd invest in high quality public transport. You wouldn't build more stupid roads. I mean, I could give you more examples. So yes, investment in infrastructure enters into the political domain. But it does need civic leadership. It does need courage. I mean, that's how you have mobility. I mean, the metro in Bilbao was one of the most far-sighted examples. You take Singapore, the investment in bike lanes and high-quality public transport has virtually eliminated the pollution and the congestion. I mean, it's not perfect. It's a ways to go. But there is a very direct relationship between enlightened leadership politically and investment in infrastructure.
First of all, congratulations for your drawing. And the entrance at the exhibition at the Pompidou Center, I was one of the ones that thought that was the exhibition, and had to come back a second time to see the rest of the show. And I think sketchbooks and drawing is a kind of resistance now in the age of artificial intelligence. How do you see the relationship, and do you think that artificial intelligence could continue your drawings, your sketchbooks?
It's a very interesting question, and I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. And we can all conjecture. And at the opening of the Pompidou exhibition, we had a celebratory dinner. And one of my colleagues afterwards said, I had the privilege of sitting next to somebody who was an expert on artificial intelligence. And he told me truthfully, they didn't really know how it worked. I mean, so I think there's a lot of mystique, and the polarities of discussion around it, where it's going to completely change our world, take over, and so on. But we have had so many expert opinions in the past on crises. In the 1970s, I can remember there was widespread panic that the population was exploding. Every high street had a family planning shop. And we were going to, even the rich nations were going to be struck by famine within a few years. The reality now is that everybody's worried about underpopulation. So I think that the only take that I would have on artificial intelligence and its ability to augment, almost like augmented reality, the end result is as good as the input. And it remains to be seen whether creativity will be embedded in a machine. That's not happened, but it doesn't mean to say that it won't happen. But I'd like to believe naively and stubbornly that that creativity is vested in the human presence, and it's an ever more sophisticated tool and another kind of tool in the toolbox. I think we've run out of questions. It must be time for dinner.